Good afternoon, everybody. It's me again, as you see from the board, Bob Savage. Before I start the lecture and the vocabulary exercises, once again, I want to remind you, please, to stay safe and be careful. And I really hope, we sincerely hope that you are all well and that you remain to be so well. We miss you as well. And one more thing, this is the holy month of Ramadan. So for those of you who are fasting, Allah Kabbaletsen. In English, may the Lord accept your sacrifice. Okay, so let's go. Contemporary Topics 2, it's the green book, you know. I hope you have it. If you don't have this book, please get at least 4 sides of A4 paper or a good notebook, because it is a note-taking activity and you are obliged to take notes. And for a change, on this occasion, I've prepared an outline sheet for you, so you can use the outline while listening to the lecture. But if you've got the books, you are obliged to close those books. But first of all, let's introduce the subject, architecture, specifically about Frank Gehry. Well, I did a bit of homework about him. Frank Gehry is a famous architect, a unique architect actually. He's a Canadian-born American. I think he was born in 1929, I'm not sure, so he's really old now, or not alive. His home in Santa Monica, I think, in California, near Los Angeles, was unique, very interesting. He designed it himself. So the lecture is about him, but first of all, what about the subject, the topic of architecture? Let me read the introduction here for this unit. For those of you with the book, of course you can read along with me, but it's not on the screen. Architecture draws on many fields, in other words, many topics and subjects. Art, engineering, mathematics, environmental studies, even philosophy. Long ago, the Roman architect Vitruvius said, a building must be strong, functional, and beautiful. These 3 principles of architecture still guide us today. So what makes a building beautiful? Well, architecture affects all of us, from our bedroom to our bathroom to our living room to our kitchen to even to our garden. Yes, sorry for that interruption. Yeah, our schools, our workplaces. Sorry, I didn't. Please, full screen your presentation. Make it full screen. How do I do that? This? Oh. Thank you. Sorry, a small technical hitch there. So, yes, architecture affects all of us because we all live in buildings and we go from one building to another. So, let's get on with it and start with the vocabulary. Oh dear. This is not working. No. The answers are in the questions. I don't know how that worked. And please, if we go down to the vocabulary, the answers are in the questions. They shouldn't be. Look. Vocabulary. That's better. Okay, fixed. Sorry about that. More technical errors. Right, here we are. Right, architects consider the aesthetics of the building they design. Okay, the key word here is aesthetics. They want people to find the buildings not only beautiful to look at, but also enjoyable to be in. So, what is the, we will find the synonyms and the definitions for these words after we finish the first sentences, and then we'll do the following 5 sentences. The foundation of architecture today is based on the fundamentals of the past. Foundation is the key word for that one. 3. The architect Frank Gehry is inspirational. There's the key word there. That's an adjective, of course. He pushes other architects to explore new ideas. Inspirational. 4. The intended use. Now here, be careful about use. It's a noun and the pronunciation is use, not the verb use. So the intended use or purpose of a mall is a place to shop. For example, a cafe's intended use is as a place to eat and drink. 5. Intended use. 5. To say a building is structurally sound, adjective there, sound, means that it's built to last a long time. All right, let's look at the choices here. A, B, C, D, and E. Okay, number 1, aesthetics. If you chose D, that's the right answer. 2, foundation. If you chose B, it's the right answer. There we are, the basis. So artistic value for aesthetics, basis, ideas that support something. Foundation of a building as well. Inspirational. If you chose A, that's the right answer. Inspirational. Causing other people to do or produce some, that's supposed to be produce, sorry. There's a D missing there. Do or produce something. Whoops. Loads of mistakes today. Dear oh dear. 4, intended use. If you say C, I guess you're right. And the last one, sound, obviously, is E. Moving on to 6. Frank Gehry is noteworthy, special, because of his dynamic style. His designs are very creative and unusual, dynamic. 7. A building must serve the needs and purposes of the people who use it. If the building does this, then the architect has met the objective. Now, to meet an objective there, that's the key word for number 7. Number 8, aesthetics is a difficult, we learned that from the last session. Aesthetics is a difficult principle to agree on because people have their own taste. 9. Frank Gehry's designs often use irregular angles, positions. It is important to stress, however, the verb there, that the designs are still structurally sound. We learned that from the last part. And 10, so we're looking for stress here as a verb. 10. Frank Gehry was resourceful, I beg your pardon, because he liked to utilize, as a verb there, of course, chain link fence, kind of fences with chains are linked like this, plywood, cheap wood, sheet metal, thin sheets of metal, and other building materials that were easily available to him. So it's the simple past there. Of course, this is a long time ago. So look at the choices. F, G, H, I, and J. Now, dynamic. Is it achieve the goal, rule or set of ideas, use something effectively, exciting, interesting, full of energy, or emphasize? If you chose I, you're right. Okay. Then the architect has met the objective, meet the objective. If you chose F, you're correct. Aesthetics is a difficult principle to agree on. Principle. Did you choose G? Then you're right again. 9. Stress. Frank Gehry's designs often use irregular angles. It's important to stress, though. So, stress. There is a verb there. If you chose J, you're right. And the last one is utilize. Well, I guess there's only one left, so it must be H, and it is. Now, the next part, I'll give you a minute. Please, if you haven't got your book, or you've got a notebook to use paper, please fill in these. Outline sheet. You're going to use an outline sheet while listening. I mean, you'll be note-taking while listening, and maybe watching the video. So, architecture, art, stroke, science. Principles from Vitruvius, an old Roman architect from thousands of years ago. A, B, and C, so probably there will be 3 points in there. Features, parts of Gehry's style. Frank Gehry, this famous architect. Again, A, B, C, so this is a clue for you that there may be. Now, some examples of his work, you'll hear them. Reasons for Gehry's style. So why? Why did he choose this, his own style? And why Professor Boyd, the man who is delivering this lecture, Professor Boyd, that's on page, we're going to the lecture now, page 76 and 77. And there's a great photograph of his, some of his artwork here. So why does the professor like Gehry? And any extra points? There's plenty of space for your notes. So, if you've got that down, I'm looking at that, but you should be getting this ready, then we can go to the lecture. And here it comes. Is it?
Okay. Today we're going to talk about Frank Gehry, one of my favorite architects. If you've seen any of the buildings he's designed, like the Dancing House in Prague, you'll know why. It's a wonderful, colorful building near the river. Many tourists go to see it. But today, we'll consider Frank Gehry's work not as tourists, but as architects. It's understood that architecture is both the science and the art of designing buildings. We use science to make sure that the building is strong. And we use art because we want the building to be beautiful. In other words, we think about the aesthetics or artistic value of the building. Now here I want to mention Vitruvius, the Roman architect who lived in the 1st century BCE. He said that a building must have 3 fundamental characteristics. 1, meet its intended use. 2, be sound, which means strong. And 3, be beautiful. He wrote these ideas 2,000 years ago, and they're still the foundation of architecture today. Let's go over these 3 characteristics in depth. First, a building must meet its intended use. Architects would think about the reason a building is being built as they design it. For example, the intended use for a school is a place to learn, right? Here architects must ask themselves, what type of design is best for both students and teachers? Second, a building must be structurally sound. What do I mean by this? I mean the design must follow these basic principles. Is it safe? Will it last a long time? Will it protect people from bad weather? Architects agree that a building must be able to do all of these things. Third, a building must be beautiful. Aesthetics is a harder principle to agree on. And buildings last a long time if they're built properly. And so something built 50 years ago may not be considered beautiful now. Styles in architecture change, like with clothes or cars. All right, to highlight what I've said thus far, in addition to meeting the intended use, a building's design must also be structurally sound and aesthetically pleasing to people. Is everyone clear on this? Now I'd like to shift to talking about Frank Gehry's work and how he applied these three characteristics of architecture. Have any of you seen his buildings? Like the Walt Disney Concert Hall in Los Angeles, or the fish dance restaurant in Kobe, Japan? It looks like a gigantic fish. Let's see if you have. It's great. Then you'll know what I mean when I say his style is very distinct. He was an architectural pioneer who wasn't afraid to try new ideas. His designs are exciting and inspirational because they push us to explore the possibilities. Specifically, how can we describe his style? I can think of three words: resourceful, playful, and innovative. It's resourceful because of the building materials. It's playful because of the bright colors and fun designs, like his store in Venice, California, with giant binoculars at the entrance. And it's innovative because he said goodbye to traditional architecture and experimented with new ideas. Now let's look at these three descriptions one at a time. Resourceful. In the 1970s, Gehry started utilizing simple building materials in his designs, like sheet metal and plywood. In fact, he's famous for using chain link fence, the kind of fence you see around construction sites to keep people out. I'm sure you've all seen it around a building being built. Since he knew the fencing would always be there, he decided to use it in his designs. For example, he designed a mall in California with a huge wall, 6 stories high, covered in chain link fence. He went on to use other materials, of course, but he started there. Playful. His designs use bright, bold colors like yellow, orange, blue, and gold. Examples include the EMP Museum in Seattle and the DG Bank building in Germany. And finally, innovative. Many of his buildings don't have straight walls. He uses irregular angles and shapes. A great example of this is the Vitra Design Museum in Germany. That's V-I-T-R-A. The building looks like it could fall down, to be honest. But of course it won't, because Gehry designed it to be structurally sound. So how did Gehry develop his dynamic style? Up until the early 1970s, he did traditional architecture. However, he didn't feel it allowed him to be creative enough. He began experimenting with his design ideas by working on houses, including his own house in Santa Monica, California, which he worked on from 1977 to 1978. Many neighbors didn't like the design of his house, but Gehry did. Now we ask, why did he develop this distinct style? He once said that he thinks like an artist. For him, a building is like a big sculpture or a big work of art. He pushes the limits of what is structurally possible from an engineering standpoint in order to create beautiful buildings. But I want to stress, he's also said that he always keeps in mind that a building is a sculpture that people interact with. If the building doesn't please them as a work of art and meet the intended use, he's failed in his objective. In closing, I want to say that Frank Gehry is a noteworthy architect because his work challenges me and other architects to consider how to use simple materials while designing strong, beautiful, and purposeful structures. Now go build something.
Okay, let's move on to the part C. Yes, the first question on page 76, if you've got the book, if not, follow by just putting 1 and you'll choose A, buildings, how is architecture both a science and an art? Buildings must look nice from the outside and the inside. B, buildings must be strong and beautiful. C, buildings must protect people from bad weather. So, A, B or C? I'm going for B. Yeah. Science and art, strong. Science, art, beautiful. 2. Why does the professor mention Vitruvius? A, to show that the principles of architecture change. B, to show that Gehry's work is based on principles from long ago. Or C, to show how styles in architecture change. You're going for, well, I know what I'm going for, B. Here we go. 3. What aspect or side of Gehry's work does the lecture mainly focus on? So what is this lecturer, who is Professor Zachary Boyd, what does he mainly focus on? A, his building style in the 1970s. B, examples of his work around the world. Or C, his distinctive style. What is the lecture mainly about concerning Gehry's work? I know which one I'm choosing. C. Yeah. Distinctive, special, original. 4. Why does Gehry use bright, bold colours? The colours mentioned were yellow, orange, blue and gold. Anyway, A, he wants to be playful, have fun. B, he is concerned about the environment, he thinks about the environment. C, he wants his buildings to be strong. So what do you think? Bright, bold colours. I'm going for A. He wants to be playful. Yeah, the lecturer mentioned it. 5. 2 more. Why did Gehry develop his dynamic style? So why did he develop this special dynamic style? A, he liked to experiment with building houses. B, other architects didn't agree with his ideas. Why that one? I don't know. Traditional architecture didn't allow him to be creative enough. So, think about that. Why did he develop it? To experiment? Because he didn't agree, or other architects didn't agree with him, or traditional architect didn't allow him here, let him be creative enough. I'm going for C. And the last one, on this side, then we've got true and false. I hope you're counting your answers, because there will be a score grade at the end. I'm introducing this aspect as well. 6, what's the main reason for the professor, why the professor likes Gehry? What's the main reason? Why does this professor, Professor Zachary Boyd, why does he like Gehry? A, because Gehry understands traditional values in architecture, B, because Gehry is innovative and resourceful. C, because Gehry has designed many different buildings. So, according to the lecture, which one? I think it's not going to be A, it's either B or C. Let's go for B, shall we? Yeah. So, please keep counting. Next part's on the other page, of course. As usual, we have a true or false section. Now, let's go through them one by one. You choose true or false. If they are false, we will correct them together. Of course, I can't get the answers from you, but I'll try to explain them for you. 1. Designing buildings is both an art and a science. According to the lecture, is that true or false? 2. An example of a building being sound, that adjective again, is one that protects people from bad weather. What do you think, true or false? 3. The professor says that the intended use of a library is a place to learn. That should be of over there. So, the intended use of a library is a place to learn. 4. Everyone agrees on aesthetics, artistic value, because styles in architecture don't change much. 5. Plywood, cheap wood, and sheet metal are examples of simple building materials Gehry used in the 1970s especially. Okay, one is true. I just forgot that these go first 5. Yeah, of course, it's mentioned on the other page. Both an art and science. 2, true. Yeah, protecting people from bad weather must so sound. 3, library? No, not library. School. So that's false. Keep counting your answers, please. 4, everyone agrees on aesthetics because styles in architecture don't change. Oh, architecture changes all the time. False. So people don't agree on aesthetics because styles change all the time. Plywood and sheet metal, he used them in the 1970s. Yes, he did. True. Okay, now we go to 6 to 10. The main reason Gehry used a chain link fence was that he thought it was beautiful. You say true or false? We'll see. The professor is worried that the Vitra Design Museum in Germany might fall down because it doesn't look sound. 8. Gehry used irregular shapes and angles to see what was possible from an engineering standpoint. Standpoint, point of view, from an engineering side, we can say. Yep. Okay. 9, the professor believes Gehry thinks more like an engineer than an artist. So the architect Gehry thinks more like an engineer than an artist. And the last one, Gehry thinks of buildings as sculptures that people interact with. Sculpture, like shapes, structures. 6, true. False. No, it's wrong. I'm wrong, sorry. The answer is he used chain link fence because he thought it was practical at the construction site. Practical, not beautiful. Sorry. 7, let me check this one. I think this one's also false. It doesn't look sad. No, it's false. The professor isn't worried that the Vitra Design Museum, which is a photo of it there, in Germany might fall down because it is sound. And Gehry used irregular shapes to see what was possible. I guess this is true. Yep. And the professor believes Gehry thinks more like an engineer than an artist. Can't be right. The other way around. The professor believes that Gehry thinks more like an artist than an engineer. So that one's false as well. And the last one, Gehry thinks of buildings as sculptures, shapes that people interact with. Yeah, he does. True. Now please count up. Yeah, I want you to count up all your questions and answers. And as usual, I will show you the scoring. Last time I told you the scoring, but this time I'm going to show you. 16 questions, 16 out of 16. That's my score, you know. If you've got 15 correct, 94%. If you got 14 right, 87%. If you got 13 correct, 81%. 12, 75%. Still good. 11, 69%. And 10, a passing grade. 10 out of 16, 62%. But if you got 9, not a passing grade. Shame on you if you only got 9. So anyway, thank you for listening and watching. And I'm sorry about the technical, my technical errors earlier on. Please forgive me. Until next time, cheerio. Bye-bye.